want to be clear. That song goes out to all you motherfucking secret societies of all goddamn motherfucking forms. I know there's been confusion over the years of what is and isn't the Illuminati. Simplest way to understand it is all these goddamn secret societies. They're so stupid, some of them think that they're against each other, not even knowing they're being played out. But anyway, enough of that. It's been a while since I uploaded a vid. The daily routine of life taking its toll on me. Woke up with my voice all messed up. But regardless, the war, the battle for the mind continues. Where we left off. Okay. I'm reading again from Scarlet and the Beast. That's Scarlet and the Beast. And this is only volume 1. A history of the war between English and French Freemasonry. Oh, you didn't know about this secret war going on? You better ask yourself something. You better ask somebody. You better do some research. Those of you out there actually thinking that the United States is run by the puppet presidents that we have, that's bullshit. In case you didn't know, British Israelism, and now even more so Zionism, rule this fucking country. That's right, they call you cattle. You're cannon fodder. You're to be used. You are a human resource. You are a slave, in case you didn't know. You're there to provide for them. Those of you who don't work out, fuck you. Those of you, they decide what you eat, how you live, what you wear, when it's time for you to go to war, when it's time for peace, when it's time to populate, and when it's time to depopulate your asses. You're cattle. You're the masses. You're the profane. You're sheeple. You're the useless eaters, is what they call you. And I'm sorry to say, they're fucking right. We left off Yalta, post-war Masonry, and the United Nations. And so that I look more intellectual, I'm going to put on my recently bought reading glasses. Surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Getting ahead of myself. At Yalta, there were certain Freemasons who served as intermediaries between Roosevelt and Stalin. This confirms the enormous influence which the Masonic advisors of his immediate circle exerted over Roosevelt and their communist tendencies. Surprise attack on Pearl Harbor? When 32-degree President Franklin D. Roosevelt realized that Hitler planned to destroy the Masonic conspiracy, he decided without congressional approval, to enter America into World War II. The United States had first to be provoked. However, so 1 year before Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt notified the southern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite Freemasonry to inculcate a pro-war mindset among American Masons. The Masonic New Age magazine promptly went into action to accomplish this task. Paul Fisher recounts the rationale promoted by the New Age for U.S. involvement in the war. Although the New Age had been somewhat ambivalent about the war against the Axis powers prior to 1939, its militancy on the issue galvanized after the Duke of Kent, brother of the reigning king, George VI, 1936 through 1952, was elected as the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of England in 1939. By late summer 1940, 16 months before Pearl Harbor, the New Age August issue became a strong advocate of U.S. involvement in the war, at first urging direct aid to England, but later pressing for direct American entry into the war. An editorial called The Brotherhood to rally to the support of England, not alone because that country is the last stronghold of Freemasonry in Europe. The editorial said the enemies of the craft, Nazi Germany, would have reason to respect the military power influence. Let me repeat that. Would have reason to respect the military power influence could marshal in this country if it chose to do so. While the New Age magazine was encouraging Masons to create pro-war public opinion in America, Roosevelt had already begun to prepare for Pearl Harbor. In September 1939, soon after Great Britain declared war on Germany, the White House canceled the 1911 U.S. Oh, God damn it. These pages get stuck together. Okay. In September 1939, soon after Great Britain declared war on Germany, the White House canceled the 1911 U.S. commercial treaty with Japan. Coincidence? In addition, our government cut off 11 raw materials which were vital to Japan's war machine. In December 1939, the embargo was extended to cover light metals. If Japan could not get petroleum, I'm sorry about these words, bauxite, rubber, and tin by trade, it would be forced to seize areas producing these products. Coincidence, huh? So you give them no option but to get these products by invading other countries. Unbelievable. The Japanese would have to attack the Dutch Indies, which the Japanese militarists knew. would inevitably lead to an American war on Japan. Facing this problem, the Japanese militarists reached what seemed to them to be an inescapable decision. They decided to attack the United States first. From this decision came the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And there are even theories that the U.S. actually attacked the Japanese first. There's been some discoveries. There's been some discoveries of Japanese warships at the bottom of the ocean some years ago that kind of point to the U.S. secretly attacking the Japanese first. And if that's true, that means your government let or actually incited the attack on Pearl Harbor. They instigated it. Think about that shit. But even worse, there are some of you out there that believe that even if that was so, it was a good thing. This is your sickness. This is your rationale. And you let these sick fucks convince you it's okay to instigate an attack on us, to instigate Pearl Harbor, to instigate 9/11. 9/11 was an inside job. When will you fucking realize the enemy is from within? And it doesn't fucking matter who the goddamn president is. As long as the powers that be, the snakes that run this country, are in charge. Just like George Carlin said so many years ago, this country was bought and sold a long time ago. Intelligence information available to the U.S. government about the movement of the Japanese Navy and other military forces. The Japanese government instructions to staff in its Washington embassy, as well as the canceled trade agreement and subsequent embargo of raw materials essential to Japan's war economy, all suggest that the U.S. government or persons in it had a greater knowledge of the likelihood of war with Japan than most Americans. The pattern of ignored warnings and coincidental lapses of security at Pearl Harbor itself also suggest a treacherous complicity at some level of government and the military of the impending disaster at Pearl Harbor. You see, you're nothing but cattle. They slaughter you like they slaughter pigs and sheep and cows and chickens. They believe at the very top, they believe they're the divine. They believe they're from the stars. Their ancestors mated with the sons of God. Their ancestors were the sons of God who mated with the women of earth. And that this divine blood is within them. This is what they believe. At the very top, even their own initiates don't even know this shit. The rest of us are nothing. They're the light, we're the darkness, we're the refuse, we're the garbage. They're the Chosenites. And we're the Goyim, the cattle. You have to understand the terms. And this has nothing to do with Judaism as a religion. It goes beyond that. This goes back to the original religion, where all the religions come from. The mystery religion of Babylon, baby. Could that be the reason why they call it the Babylonian Talmud? One year before Pearl Harbor, for instance, American naval intelligence had cracked the Japanese code. 1 month before the attack, the White House knew that Japanese armed forces were mobilizing and moving southward. By November 20th, the State Department was aware that a task force of the Japanese Navy, including 4 of the largest Japanese aircraft carriers, were steaming towards the Hawaiian Islands. On November 27th, a warning to prepare for war was sent from Washington to Pearl Harbor. Yet Pearl Harbor neither increased precautions nor moved to a higher level of awareness, or rather, a higher level of alertness. At the end of November, messages from Japan to its U.S. embassy were intercepted by the U.S. Army intelligence, showing clearly that the negotiations between Japan and the United Snakes were only pro forma. In early December, Army intelligence knew that the Japanese embassy in Washington had been ordered to destroy all its codes and to prepare its staff for departure. On the evening of December 6, 3 aircraft carriers needed for the impending war against Japan, the Lexington, Enterprise, and Saratoga, sailed out of Pearl Harbor to open sea, where they would escape attack. In the early morning hours of December 7th, the anti-torpedo net entering Pearl Harbor was carelessly left open. Carelessly, yeah, my ass. Was more like purposely. 5 midget submarines, dropped from larger Japanese subs, entered and operated within the harbor. These submarines were detected at 3:42 a.m. before they entered the harbor, but no warning was sent until 6:54 a.m. And only after one had been attacked and sunk. At the same time, that morning, an Army enlisted man detected on radar a group of unidentified planes coming down from the north, 132 miles away. But this report was ignored. At 7:30 a.m., an enlisted sailor noticed 24 planes about a mile over his ship. His report was ignored. In the next half hour, these early arrivals from the Japanese carriers were joined by others. And at 7:55 a.m., the attack began. The next day, Brother Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. Let me take a water break. And I apologize for the way my voice sounds. I'm getting over a cold, and that's one of the reasons.
Doctors still appear to be baffled by this new so-called super flu. They're still unsure of exactly how it spreads, and with it reaching near epidemic proportions, the quarantine was enacted and enforced by the National Guard early this morning. Armed troops are not allowing visitors in or letting employees employees out. As you can see down there, hundreds have gathered at the hospital's entrance, some wanting to see loved ones, but most simply demanding medical attention, with symptoms such as nausea, fever, chills, disorientation, and in extreme cases, reporting catatonic states and delusional aggressive behavior. The initial reports of recently deceased patients coming back to life have been dismissed as, quote, absurd rumors, end quote. I've now been told this is now a restricted airspace, so we will have to cut our coverage short.
All right. Let's see how long I can do this. Post-war Masonry in Japan. Japan's constitution forbade anyone from joining Freemasonry. 33rd degree Freemason General Douglas MacArthur, 1880 through 1964, was positive that Hitler had poisoned the minds of the Japanese against the Masonic order. He promised himself that if and when he got to Japan, he was going to make sure that provision was eliminated from any future constitution. Masonic status in Japan changed dramatically with the defeat of the Japanese. When MacArthur became Supreme Commander in post-war Japan, he informed 33rd degree George M. Saunders, 1898 to whenever he died, Imperial Recorder of the Shrine of North America, that his occupational government in Japan was molded on the precepts of Freemasonry. MacArthur's first order was to reopen Masonic lodges throughout Japan. Most of his hand-picked generals and many lower commissioned officers who held key positions during the occupation were Masons. MacArthur's aide, 33rd degree Major Michael Revisito, was made first Grand Master of Tokyo Lodge by the Masonic Supreme Council at Charleston, South Carolina, Sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern let me say this. 33rd degree Major Michael Revisto was made first Grand Master of Tokyo Lodge by the Masonic Supreme Council at Charleston, South Carolina, Sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern Jurisdiction of Scottish Rite Masonry, confirmed that all except one successor to General MacArthur were active Masons and members of the Scottish Rite. Japanese have since concluded that Masonry had much to do with the success of the occupation. By 1955, 32 degree Takashi Komatsu, 1886 to whenever he died, was the first native-born Japanese to become master of a Masonic lodge in Japan. That same year, Ikiro Hatoyama, 1883 through 1959, Prime Minister of Japan, was raised to Master Mason. Read details on Masonification of post-World War II Philippines. Hitler's final solution. According to Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Hitler initially intended to eliminate the Masons. He assumed that killing all Masons would eliminate the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. Not until the latter half of the war did Hitler incorporate as a priority his final solution, which was the wholesale killing of Jews. Or were they Jews? During this period, the better part of 6 million Jews were sacrificed to Scarlet and her Nazi creation. In the summer of 1941, as Germany prepared her surprise attack on Russia and Japan prepared her attack on Pearl Harbor, Hitler summoned Heinrich Himmler, 1900 through 1945, and ordered him to be ready to carry out the final solution of the Jewish question. The Wannsee Conference, which was held to plan the final solution, was scheduled for January 20th, 1942, 44 days after Pearl Harbor. Hitler and the Russian front. Meanwhile, in the summer of 1940, to the consternation of the world, Hitler overran France. The Fuhrer was convinced that Great Britain would now make peace. England, desiring to push Germany east, refused. Hitler made his first fatal mistake, Operation Sea Lion, code name for the attack on Great Britain, was fixed for September 21st, 1940. Hitler and Stalin were also negotiating the Tripartite Pact to divide Europe among Germany, Italy, and Russia. Stalin's many demands, however, angered Hitler. In retaliation, he decided to attack Russia. Codename for the attack was Operation Barbarossa. Closet Mason Hjalmar Stott, 1877 through 1970, Hitler's leading banker and economics minister, made England aware of the Fuhrer's plan. Hitler's battle with Great Britain ended on June 22nd, 1941, the day Operation Barbarossa began. On July 12, 1941, England made a false show of support to Russia by signing an alliance which obliged military assistance. Stalin immediately demanded that the British invade Western Europe to relieve Russia of the German advancement on the Eastern Front. London stalled, convinced that Hitler would conquer the Soviet Union in 6 weeks, thus eliminating the communist threat. When the war dragged on for 3 months, Stalin made more demands. To appease him, the United States signed an agreement with the Soviets at the end of September to send them military arms. Operation Barbarossa dragged on until the Russian winter set in and defeated Hitler. So for all you glorifiers of war, lovers of war that like to rewrite history and say how the Allies defeated Hitler, no. You were little raptors attacking Godzilla. The Axis was Godzilla, and you were little raptors. And if it wasn't for the winter of Russia, all of you, I wouldn't even exist. A lot of us wouldn't even exist. But those of you who would be here would be saluting the National Socialist flag. Remember that. Thank Mother Nature, the handmaiden of God, for the winter of Russia. English Freemasonry, realizing her planned destruction of the Soviet Union at the hands of the Nazis, was doomed. Began to prepare for a settlement at Yalta. Masons and Yalta. By 1941, England and the United States were the only major nations with functioning lodges. Lodges in Europe, Africa, and the Orient had been decimated. No lodges had existed in Russia since the mid-1920s, when the Soviet Union, in effect, was made one colossal Masonic state with a type of Masonic initiation transferred to the Communist Party. Russia, England, and the United States, therefore, were the only Masonic powers left on Earth. Together, the three conspired to destroy Hitler and divide Europe between East and West. D. Ponson's reads the events at Yalta in the same way, describing the conference as an example of the secret Masonic origin of a political decision. Yalta Agreement was not the brainchild of Franklin Roosevelt or Winston Churchill. These two powerful Masons were instead secretly discussing the post-war restoration of the Habsburg thrones. Both regarded the collapse of the monarchical system as one of the primary factors which had led to the rise of totalitarianism and especially to the phenomenon of Nazism, which we all know stands for National Socialism. They agreed that the restoration of thrones was the best means of holding the shattered shell of post-war Europe together. They talked of restoring the Habsburgs to the thrones of Austria and Hungary, with Otto von Habsburg presiding over a form of with Otto von Habsburg presiding over a form of imperial confederation of the Danube. According to Otto von Habsburg, they also discussed the possibility of installing Lord Louis Mountbatten, 1900 through 1979, as Emperor of a new German Confederation. Roosevelt and Dr. and I'm going to say this as well as I can, Benez, to test Masonic reaction to a monarchical restoration, Roosevelt and Churchill leaked the information to a few powerful Grand Orient Masons in exile. One was Dr. Edvard Benez, 1884 through 1948, the exiled president of Czechoslovakia, and undisputed leader of the Little Entente group of states. As a Democrat of very advanced ideas, which included a justification for communism, Benez was an important player in international politics, and as a fanatical Freemason, he waged a Masonic war against the Habsburgs his entire life. In fact, in 1938, when faced with the Nazi invasion of his own Czechoslovakia, he said, "Rather Hitler than the Habsburgs." His faith in the Führer proved to be an error, for Hitler closed the lodges and killed or imprisoned the Masons. Benez, which it seems they always do, fled to France. Why is it they always flee to France? Benez fled to France. The Ayatollah Khomeini, for some reason, fled to France. Is it because the real powers behind these people are the French? Meaning French Freemasonry? I'm just wondering. Is France the funder of a lot of these so-called terrorist groups? I'm just asking questions. Benez fled to France, where he established a Czechoslovakia National Committee, which moved to London in 1939. In London, he assumed the presidency of a provisional government in exile. In 1943, he cemented Czechoslovakia's former friendly relations with the Soviet Union through an alliance with that country. It was in 1939, when he arrived in London, that he first heard the rumor of the post-war restoration of the Habsburg thrones. He was horrified. A fierce supporter and devoted ally of Stalin, Benez would rather have post-war Czechoslovakia, a satellite of the Soviet Union, than a kingdom ruled by the Habsburg. This brilliant politician put as much confidence in Stalin as he had in Hitler. Benez also enjoyed considerable influence over Roosevelt, both being high Masons. In an attempt to checkmate the Churchill-Roosevelt arrangement for a monarchical post-war Europe, Benez asked for a meeting with the president to discuss an alternate plan. The result was the preparation and conclusion of the Yalta Agreement. Dr. Benez urged Roosevelt not to cancel the advances made by Grand Orient Masonry by supporting the absurd proposal to restore thrones. He wanted Roosevelt to give communism a chance. Benez argued that communism was better than absolutism, offering the Soviet Union as an example. He had studied Stalin, said Benez, and knew him personally. Stalin could be trusted. Had he not broken with Hitler? Brother Stalin would also help destroy Nazism if offered half of Europe. Benez suggested to Roosevelt that he be permitted to visit with Brother Stalin and negotiate the terms of an agreement. Roosevelt agreed, but Churchill strongly objected. An article by Demary Bess, April 17, 1948, appeared in the Saturday Evening Post entitled "Roosevelt's Secret Deal Doomed Czechoslovakia." Bess had interviewed Dr. Benez during the war, and this excerpt from Bess's account of these events highlights Benez's supreme confidence in Stalin. I had a long talk with Benez during the First Russo-Finnish War. The Hitler-Stalin Pact was then still in force, but Dr. Benez told me he had sent word to the president through an American intermediary urging him not to lose faith in Stalin. When the break between Hitler and Stalin did come, in the summer of 1941, Dr. Benez was naturally pleased, as were all Allied statesmen. President Roosevelt, disregarding Churchill's objections, made it possible for Dr. Benez to visit Moscow. The Czech leader had 2 long talks with Stalin himself. The result was a treaty of alliance, signed on 12 December 1943. The 2 countries agreed to combine against any possible future German aggression. Dr. Benez pledged that he would suppress all organized anti-Russian groups in Czechoslovakia after the liberation of that country. Stalin, in turn, personally guaranteed that Russia would not interfere in Czechoslovakia's post-war development. When the pact was announced in a joint conference, Dr. Benez faced the Russian leader directly and said, "Mr. Stalin, I have complete confidence in you. We have signed an agreement for non-interference in domestic affairs, and I know you will keep it." The Saturday Evening Post article tells how Roosevelt sought Benez's guidance in dealing with Stalin. And let me take a little break here before we continue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage. A lie is a lie, and it don't matter how many dumb people believe it. And the truth is the truth, hiding right out in plain sight, and still people don't see it. Man, this shit got me heated, and I won't stop till the elite are being defeated. They keep us deceived about everything that we think, and they keep it a secret. What we're taught is not conducive with reality. Big bang, evolution, and there's gravity. I tell the truth, and then these motherfuckers laugh at me, telling me the earth is photoshopped because it has to be. Most people accept the deception happily, but what they're doing to us all is a tragedy. God created the heavens and the earth in a verse, but we're living in a Freemasonic galaxy. They say we're monkeys on a ball flying through outer space, but there's no proof. It seems to have vanished without a trace. NASA and other agencies falling down from grace. You can take that bullshit pseudoscience and get out my face. I'm the antisocial type. You're a government prototype. That's why you make it a point to tell me that I'm crazy every time you're angry, cause you know I'm right. I'm standing outside the house of cards about to watch it fall. No more living on a cartoon ball. Horizon means horizontal. Indoctrination is awful because you're taught the glow model. Ever since y'all could fly, we follow rapists and murderers, liars, thieves, and sun worshippers, saying we can't see curvature cause we're all too small. And no, it's never been proven. They say we're ripping and shooting. The earth is spinning and moving. Oh no, no, not at all. It's a criminal enterprise where deception intensifies. NASA's got us all living life on a cartoon ball. What you're seeing here is a mirage. They say that we went to the moon 6 times, but pure BS is the way that smelled. Now they're telling us that we can't even leave the planet because of the Van Allen radiation belt. Yeah, okay, sure. NASA, what you lying for? You lying now, you lied before. I can't take this anymore. The only thing that took to space was your imagination. Fake aliens are coming, now they have you waiting. We need to do something about it, no procrastination. Trying to cause the masses to awaken, that's the path I've taken. But you can see if you check all the percentages. So many people having cognitive dissonance. But that's what happens at the loss of your innocence. Then you get involved with all of this wickedness. They try to do all the humans this way. So are they just idiots? Who is to say? Conditioned by the television, it makes your decisions, opinions, and you just obey. Stuck in the material domain of Satan, where everything in each and every day is pagan. Mandela effect, cause the game is changing. People waking up and now the cage is shaking. The earth is flat, and that is a universal fact. If it isn't that, then tell me where the fuck the curve is at. They tell us that we can't see it because we're all too small. And now we're spinning on a cartoon ball. Alright.
And that's a fact that you so-called Christians out there have to face. Either the Bible is the word of God and you have to believe it, or it's a lie. You have to decide, do you really believe what the Bible says, or do you believe what NASA and the Freemasonic community of scientists say? You can't say that you believe in the Bible, but then believe that the world is round. All this world is round crap, is a sphere crap, came from the Freemasonic liars. They want you to believe. You can't have evolution which then in turn supports atheism without the earth being round theory. You have to connect the dots. They want you to believe in evolution, which in turn will help you become an atheist. But your Bible says the opposite. Nowhere in the Bible are you going to find it saying the earth is round. Now, I know I'm going off topic here, but you guys are a bunch of hypocrites out there. You either believe what your holy books tell you or you don't. And most of you don't even fucking know what your holy books say. Because you don't even read your Bible. You don't even read your Bible. You let some fucking Freemasonic pastor or reverend in the church read it for you. And of course they're not going to read the parts that are important. They're going to read, the only parts they're going to read are the ones that continue keeping you a slave. Y'all better wake up. The enemy has taken over every facet of your society. Your politics, your religion, your entertainment industry. The enemy is taking it over. Okay, where I left off. The Saturday Evening Post article tells how Roosevelt sought Benez's guidance in dealing with Stalin. I almost said Satan. The following account of how President Roosevelt and Dr. Benez worked together in formulating wartime Russian policies was told to me by Dr. Benez himself in several conversations which I had with him during and since the war. The story begins in the spring of 1939, several months before the outbreak of war. The Czech statesman first sought refuge in London, but after a few months he visited the United States, and a secret meeting was arranged one weekend at the Roosevelt's Hyde Park home. Mr. Roosevelt knew that Dr. Benez was a close student of Russian affairs, and that he was personally acquainted with Stalin. The chief question in mind, said Roosevelt, is how to get an agreement with the Russians which will stick. Some of my advisors say that is impossible. They insist that the Russians cannot be trusted to keep any agreement if they see an advantage to themselves in breaking it. What do you think about this? The Czech leader replied confidently, I have given long and careful thought to that matter. I have studied and restudied the actions of the Soviet government ever since it was founded, and particularly since Stalin rose to power. And it is my considered opinion that if Stalin himself pledges his personal word, then he can be trusted completely. Today, as we piece together the record of the eventful wartime years, it appears that Mr. Roosevelt was wholly convinced by Dr. Benez's conclusion, and that henceforth the president's policy towards Russia was to be based upon his confidence in Stalin's personal word. This explains his intense desire to meet Stalin face to face, first at Tehran and later at Yalta. And isn't Tehran in Iran? Strange. Alexa, where is Tehran located?
Tehran is a city located in Tehran province, in the northern part of Iran. It serves as the capital of Iran. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thanks for your feedback.
Strange now how Iran, if that's the capital city of Iran, strange how Iran is now the enemy. Strange, huh? Wherever these assholes go affects the nations that they go to. They're like a virus. They're like... Life magazine, September 27, 1948, reported President Roosevelt's almost sublime confidence in Stalin. to William C. Bullitt, a former ambassador of the United States at Paris, the president said, "Bill, I think that if I gave him, Stalin, everything that I possibly can and ask nothing from him in return, noblesse oblige, he won't try to annex anything and will work with me for a world of democracy and peace." Oh boy. Bullitt later reported his response to President Roosevelt as follows: "I reminded the president that when he talked of noblesse oblige, he was not speaking of the Duke of Norfolk, but of a Caucasian bandit whose only thought when he got something for nothing was that the other fellow was an ass, and that Stalin believed in the communist creed, which calls for the conquest of the world for communism." Yalta, the Pax of Universal Freemasonry. Through all these conversations, the participation of France, the headquarters of Grand Orient Freemasonry, was never considered, for at least 3 important reasons. First, France's activity during World War II was less than Masonic, for the Vichy government had sided with the Nazis in outlawing the Brotherhood. Second, by creating a more powerful Bolshevik beast, France had fortified its Grand Orient prestige to the Soviet Union. The third and perhaps most significant reason for the Allies excluding France from participating at Yalta was self-preservation. For 2 centuries, Europe had been in conflict because the headquarters of the 2 Freemasonries, Paris and London, were too approximate. It would be in the interest of English Masonry if the power base of the Communist Grand Orient were relocated to a remote part of the earth, say to Moscow. That done, world peace would follow, and Sion's long-desired United States of Europe could be realized under British capitalism if French communism were subdued. Yalta Agreement, then, was ostensibly a plan to maintain peace within Universal Freemasonry. Grand Orient Russia, and not Grand Orient France, was to share the world equally with English and American Freemasonry. Count de Ponces explains why America was the logical arbiter between the 2 Freemasonries. Freemasonry in the United Snakes, while maintaining its union and friendly relations with the Grand Lodge of England, occupies an intermediary position between English Freemasonry and the Grand Orients of Europe. Some of its branches are nearer the English conception, Northern Jurisdiction, Boston, commonly known as the Eastern Establishment, and others the European, Southern Jurisdiction, Charleston. In such an understanding, Freemason President Roosevelt would be the obvious mediator between Churchill and Stalin, and I'm telling you, why do you think we're having the troubles we're having in this country now? Are the 2 sides claiming what that belongs to them in this country? Just a thought. I'm just putting it out there. Oh boy. Well, to the victors are the spoils. If they want to claim half of this country, let them. If they want to divide and conquer, let them. That's what you bastards deserve. You're a weak nation. You're a weak people. I don't give a fuck how many goddamn tattoos you have. I don't give a fuck how many bitches you get pregnant. And you call yourself men and women. This is a country of losers. And they're taking the country away from you. And you deserve it. You deserve the civil war that's coming. You deserve the Third World War that's coming. You deserve everything you get. And you're still waiting on God to save you? God ain't gonna get involved in nothing until you help yourselves. I'm going to repeat what I said. In such an understanding, Freemason President Roosevelt would be the obvious mediator between Churchill and Stalin. Yalta would achieve harmony in universal Freemasonry by dividing the world among the three great Masonic powers. Western Bloc nations, including France, would fall under the influence of English Freemasonry. These nations would be known as First World of capitalistic nations, Eastern Bloc nations, including France's far eastern possessions, would fall under the influence of the Soviet Union. These nations would be known as Second World of communist nations. Developing nations would be known as Third World or non-aligned nations and be up for grabs. And you were wondering why all this is happening all these years, all these wars. English Freemasonry and the Communist Grand Orients would have equal opportunity to capture any third world nation and place it under its Masonic sphere of influence, except for those in Central and South America. The Western Hemisphere was not to be influenced by either Russia or Great Britain, leaving Grand Orients and Grand Lodges of Latin and South America under the influence of American Masonry. France was both rewarded and punished at Yalta. Rewarded for her Masonic resistance movement during World War II, more details later, and punished for her anti-Masonic Vichy government. For example, some of the African states were placed under French Grand Orient influence, while her Far Eastern possessions were placed under Soviet influence. The rest of the Third World nations were subject to capture by either Masonic power, which explains the post-war revolutions on the continent of Africa and the past political turmoil in South Africa. So that explains why they call you Third World. Yalta agenda. Three main players at Yalta, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, were famous Masons. At their side were high political Masons and their Masonic advisors. The Yalta agenda included 1. The destruction of Hitler. 2. The division of Europe between English Freemasonry and Grand Orient Russia. And 3. Cooperation in uniting the three Freemasonries in a new world order, to be called the United Nations. A famous and extremely important letter discovered by the Spanish government in March 1943 confirms the Masonic agenda at Yalta. Written on White House stationery, the letter was dated February 20th, 1943, and was signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was addressed to a Jewish Freemason named Zabrowski, who was then acting as a liaison officer between President Roosevelt and Stalin. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Zabrowski, the United States, United Snakes, and Great Britain are ready without any reservations to give the USSR absolute parity and voting rights in the future reorganization of the post-war world. She will therefore take part, as the English Prime Minister let him know when sending him the first draft from Aden, in the directing group in the heart of councils of Europe and of Asia. She has a right to this not only through her vast intercontinental situation, but above all because of her magnificent struggle against Nazism, National Socialism, which will win the praise of history and civilization. It is our intention, I speak on behalf of our great country and of the mighty British Empire, that these continental councils be constituted by the whole of the independent states in each case, with equitable proportional representation. And you can, my dear Mr. Zabrowski, assure Stalin that the USSR will find herself on a footing of complete equality, having an equal voice with the United States and England in the direction of the said councils. Equally with England and the United States, she will be a member of the High Tribunal, which will be created to resolve differences between the nations, and she will take part similarly and identically in the selection, preparation, armament, and command of the international forces which, under the orders of the Continental Council, will keep watch within each state to see that peace is maintained in the spirit worthy of the League of Nations. Thus, these interstate entities and their associated armies, International Police Force, peacekeepers, peacekeepers my ass, will be able to impose their decisions and make themselves obeyed. Listen to this! Let me read this again. This is talking about the so-called UN peacekeepers. Those bastards in blue. The ones they're going to send over here to calm things down once this civil war gets going. Thus, these interstate entities and their associated armies, international police force, will be able to impose their decisions and to make themselves obeyed. Read between the lines. This being the case, a position so elevated in the tetrarchy of the universe ought to give Stalin enough satisfaction not to renew claims which are capable of creating insoluble problems for us. In this way, the American continent will remain outside all Soviet influence and within the exclusive concern of the United States. As we have promised the countries of our continent, it shall. In Europe, France will gravitate into the British orbit. We have reserved for France a secretariat with a consultative voice, but without voting rights, as a reward for her present resistance and as a penalty for her former weakness. Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece will develop under the protection of England towards a modern civilization which will lift them out of their historical decline. We will grant the USSR an access to the Mediterranean. We will accede to her wishes concerning Finland and the Baltic, and we shall require Poland to show a judicious attitude of comprehension and compromise. Stalin will still have a wide field for expansion in the little unenlightened, meaning anti-Masonic, countries of Eastern Europe. Ha 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 ha! Always taking into account the rights which are due to the fidelity of Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, and he will completely recover the territories which have been temporarily snatched from Great Russia. Sounds familiar, huh? Most important of all, after the partition of the Third Reich and the incorporation of its fragments with other territories to form new nationalities which will have no link with the past, the German threat will conclusively disappear insofar as being any danger to the USSR, to Europe, and to the entire world. Turkey! But it will serve no useful purpose to discuss that question further. It needs full understanding, and Churchill has given the necessary assurances to President Enanu in the name of us both. The access to the Mediterranean contrived for Stalin ought to content him. Asia, we are in agreement with his demands, except for any complications which may arise later. As for Africa, listen up, Africans! Listen up, African peoples of the world, in particular Africa itself. As for Africa, again, what need for discussion? We must give something back to France and even compensate her for her losses in Asia. It will be necessary to give Egypt something, as has already been promised to the Wafdist nationalist government. As regards Spain and Portugal, they will have to be recompensed for the renunciations necessary to achieve better universal balance. The United States will also share in the distribution by right of conquest, and they will be obliged to claim some points which are vital for their zone of influence. That is only fair. Brazil, too, must be given the small colonial expansion which has been offered to her. I don't know about where you live, but over here in Jersey, there's a lot of Brazilians. In view of the rapid annihilation of the Reich, convince Stalin, my dear Mr. Zabrowski, that he ought to give way for the good of all in the matter of the colonies in Africa, and to abandon all propaganda and intervention in the industrial centers of America. Assure him also of my complete understanding and of my entire sympathy and desire to facilitate these solutions, which makes more timely than ever the personal discussion which I propose. The above is only a general outline of a plan which is intended for further study. This is the issue and the whole issue. Signed, Franklin Roosevelt. Traitor! 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 It's a lot of it. Oh my God, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it, but we're going to continue, hopefully tomorrow. Whew. My goodness, how we have been deceived. How we have been deceived. The hell is this? You know, I'll be honest with you. At this point, I am actually reading and uploading these videos really for myself, for my own education. Because you guys are so far gone, you know, I don't see any change happening. Things are going to get worse. They've gotten really bad, and you guys just don't give a fuck. As long as you're entertained, as long as you have your money and your whores, and that goes for straight as well as gay people. They actually have you. They're actually talking and mentioning the Illuminati in your popular cult, in your popular pop culture. The leaders of all the teams in the Marvel comic book universe, the leaders of all the teams in Marvel, are members of another group calling itself the Illuminati. And I see some of you idiots and morons on YouTube with smiles on your faces. That's Iron Man, Professor X, Reed Richards, and who's the other one? There's another leader. You're talking about the Illuminati as if they're the good guys. They got you actually believing that they're the good guys. And it doesn't matter because you don't believe that there's a real Illuminati. But if there were, they're doing everything for us. They got you brainwashed. They're right in your face telling you that they rule you. And don't get concerned about any decisions that are being made. It's for the benefit of you and your future and your children's future. Some of these upcoming movies, one of them is called Secret Wars, based on the comic books from the 80s, if I'm correct. Secret Wars? So there are wars in secret? Could they be referring to the war between English and French Freemasonry? And for those of you thinking that the war between French and English Freemasonry has been over since World War II, nope. The war continues. The war continues. That's why it's a secret war. Well, you don't got me fooled, motherfuckers. All you secret society bastards, you don't got me fooled. You don't got me fooled. You're not the good guys. You've always been the bad guys. You always will be the bad guys. And guess what? You will fail.
It seems horizontal. Indoctrination is awful because you're taught to...
This goes out to you, New World Order. Your destruction is near.
You